Well, do we start with Rust?
I mean, can talk about both. I think I have a little more knowledge about Rust since I've put almost 500 hours into it. I don't know, I put almost 600 hours into it.
That's
about
a little bit.
Yeah, about 300, 400 in Legacy Rust when it first released, and now about another about another 200 hours in this new version. Since they reworked it completely and made it prettier.
Well, I mean, we'll just talk survival games in general, right? So, Rust is the one that seemed the most interesting to me. I haven't played any of the other ones, mostly because I sat back and watched, right? And I saw that DayZ was a crapshoot. And H1Z1 looks like kind of interesting-ish, but only PvP and not really sandboxy, so meh.
I haven't really played H1Z1, but I played DayZ. I have about 70 hours in DayZ, but it's just hard. Like, DayZ's not a bad game necessarily. It's just not necessarily satisfying right now, especially where it is. Back in the modded version.
For the price point, right?
Yeah. Like, the modded version, Arma, when it, started, Arma 2 DayZ mod, it was a little bit more satisfying to play. Granted, it wasn't necessarily as optimized as it is now. It runs better in a standalone version of it, the game, instead of the modded version. But right now, where the standalone is, it doesn't really have the kind of things that people got excited about, like the random helicopter crashes and stuff. They're just now adding in, like, cars and all that kind of good stuff
that was already in Arma.
Yeah, so playing through the DayZ standalone game right now while they get all those things back, it's not necessarily as fun, and you don't want to really spend your time in it, because you can't really set up, like, camps and tents and stuff to save all your gear or stash it somewhere. Until, like, recently they started putting all that stuff kind of back in. Still, like, working on things they had problems with back in the mod, like floor zombies and those kind of weird buggy shit that goes on.
Gotta love
and
glitches.
It just DayZ, it just feels like it takes so much of your time and doesn't really deliver much back to you. It's almost more like work than it is playing a game. Which is sort of what the survival series.
So,
yeah.
It's got a lot of intricate things that you've got to kind of keep going. You break a leg and your leg is legit broken, but
like that stuff, and it's all cool and all that kind of stuff, but right now, like where it is with the standalone version of DayZ, it's just not, it doesn't feel like you're getting anything out of playing the game. Which is, I understand, could be like a feeling that some people get with like survival games, like especially like Rust. If you try to start out on a higher population server, and you don't necessarily have people waiting at the ready for you to go like join up with them, your experience isn't going to be very fun, and you're generally not going to get too far into the game without being either lucky or just blowing a lot of time trying to start over and over and over again. Because people will just kill you. Like, it's not a matter of, oh, maybe this guy's nice. It's generally most people that you see are just gonna kill you. So you generally avoid interaction with players when you start. You just try to run away, hide in the holes, make little like tiny little cut bases in like some rocks and stuff, so you hope people don't find you. Try to get a start, like a bearings. But they recently, with the Rust updates, they've added the whole temperature system. They don't have any weather. Like, there's no snowfall or rain or anything like that.
But there are regions that have different weather, isn't there?
Yeah. Like, the desert, if you're the desert adds heat, and you can be too hot. But right now, I don't think they have a system in place to damage you for the heat. Necessarily, just kind of you can't heal as much while you're too hot, and your screen kind of gets blurry around the edges. But they have this like temperature system, and even if you're not in like the snow or that kind of stuff, you can, when nightfall comes around, the temperature like drops, and even if you're in your own base, the temperature isn't any different from your base, so your base is inside is the same temperature as outside.
Yeah, unless you have some sort of heating element when you're in the cold.
Yeah, or if you have like, which would be like the campfire, you can use the campfire to heat yourself, or you can wear clothes, like you can make jackets, you can find blueprints for snow jackets, which is the warmest thing you can wear, but it also doesn't give you as much protection as, say, wearing a hoodie and a vagabond jacket, because the armor system is strange, and they don't really explain it, and they don't really tell you what does more. The only way you find out is through experimenting, which is basically shooting each other.
Yeah, from what I've seen on streams, right, it's mostly just, oh, it takes this many C4, or like it should take like 2 shotgun shots to kill that person, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, they don't, when they do updates and stuff, they don't go over any of that stuff. They kind of like, here's some new stuff, here's some armor, and here's what you can do. And it generally falls on the players to figure out how much you can do with it, and how much it takes to damage certain things or kill people wearing certain armors. And I think recently, I don't know if they changed it again, but recently what people found out wearing vagabonds with a blue shirt under it, is the best way to protect yourself from gunfire for your torso. And what I find interesting is the helmets, the like mask. So you have the coffee can helmet and the bucket helmet and the face mask. They all protect you from gunfire from wherever it's actually covering your head. So the bucket helmet protects everything but your face, pretty much. And then you have the face mask that protects the entire front of your face, but gives you no protection from getting shot in the head from, like, say, from the side or behind. And then I think the worst out of the three is the coffee can helmet, which is kind of covers the sort of bottom of your face and your neck, and then covers the top of your head, but it leaves most of your face and most of your head exposed. So it's not just you put something on your head and it gives you a certain amount of protection over all your head. It literally only protects what it covers, which I think was interesting to find that out. So what most people end up doing is using the face mask, because getting into firefights, you're generally facing each other. So usually you see people running around with the face mask on, and they generally ignore the other helmets.
And running away.
Yeah, but once you get up to the point where you can make like face mask and stuff, you're generally you're sort of at the point where you can make guns and weapons, and you can fight other people, and you can stand your ground. At some manner, you can stand your ground. You might not necessarily have blueprints to make like automatic rifles or the bolt action, but you can have like a revolver or that kind of stuff. Like, I think I put a good amount of time in the server I'm on now, and the only gun blueprint I have is a revolver, and that wasn't from actually getting it to drop from something. It was from stealing it from somebody else's base. They just happened to have it laying around when I raided them. So the drop rates on gun BPs are really low, which is the main reason why grouping is even more important now that they put the blueprint system in. But just a couple patches ago, the last couple updates, they put in a research table, which kind of helps with that. If you're like a solo player, you can make a research table. Instead of having to find blueprints, you can put an item on the table, and then it requires you to go find materials to research that item on the table, and it has a 30% chance on a new item to give you the blueprint, and then it also can like destroy it. It can be destroyed, or it disappears, or be broken if it has a durability on it. Like the guns and the pickaxes and stuff like that all have durabilities on them. So instead of having to find a BP drop from a barrel, like most people were doing before the research table, you'd have to go out and you'd have to find all these barrels, or you'd have to go to a raid town and open boxes and kill the barrels in there, and hopefully you get a good drop. And most people are looking for BPs. And generally what Rust is whatever BPs you have access to via other players, or the BPs that you found, will determine how powerful you are on that server.
And you don't keep those on death, right?
You actually do keep all the BPs on the server. It's up to the server owner, the owner of each individual server, if they wipe your BPs or not. But what happens now is generally a lot of the servers will wipe every other week, or they'll wipe with force wipes from the developers, from Facepunch. And so
because of
the server
updates.
will wipe. Yeah, the server will wipe, but it will get rid of your inventory and your base, and it will clear the map. But you get to keep all your BPs as long as the owner of the server allows it. The owner of the server could wipe the BPs too with every reset, and you'd have to find all those BPs again. But
that would be unfun.
Yeah, how it's set up, it takes so much time to even get to those good BPs that wiping them continuously would just kill your drive to want to keep playing, because you lose all this stuff that you worked hard to get.
Right, and as a server admin, the last thing you want to do is send everyone away.
Yeah, it's like the one thing you get to keep right now in Rust with the server wipes. It's the only thing that keeps you coming back. You're like, well, I already have all this stuff on this server, I don't want to go start over on another server. And so that's why you have like these people that they find a server, they get BPs that they like, that kind of stuff they build up, and they just stick there. You get these regulars on servers instead of having new people cycle in constantly, and you don't have us set groups and that kind of stuff, which I find is what makes it kind of fun, because you have these clans or these groups that get together and they end up having names. People name them in some manner. Like the server I'm playing in right now, they have a group called the Church, and everybody knows who's in the church. And you have these kind of regular groups that are usually always on. They get like named by
Gilded.
other players. Yeah.
Basically just guilds, yeah. I mean, I can see like resetting it sometimes would be fun, right? But like,
yeah,
for a casual player base, you would just send most of those players away.
Yeah, because what people like the reason why people stick with one server is generally they can just like hop on, play a little bit, have like their blueprints, have their fun, and then they could just leave and come back like a week later or so and play again.
Right, and even if they get killed in their sleep, it doesn't fucking matter because they've got blueprints and they can continue where they kind of left off.
Yeah, and the main way to survive in Rust is just get a group, like get friends, people that are going to be on. Even if you're not on, they can kind of protect your body and protect your base. You don't have to necessarily be there. Which is pretty much the case with any survival game.
Yeah,
having
hidden
numbers,
stashes, something like that.
Having numbers is always a plus for survival games instead of trying to solo against numerous other players. At least for the online multiplayer kind of game, like DayZ, Rust, Ark, H1Z1, all that kind of stuff. Generally, you'll have a more fun experience with people that you can trust, that you can play with.
I think that's kind of true for any game in any title.
Yeah.
Even FPS.
It's kind of more essential with these PvP survival games to really progress at least quickly. I mean, it's completely possible to solo on these survival games and like Rust and have your own base and just be by yourself, but it's just you, and people can take all your shit when you're offline. So if you make a noticeable base that gets people's attention and a big group rolls along and like, hey, we want to take his shit, it's a lot easier to take one dude's shit from a big base than it is to try to fend it off with 5 people inside shooting at you.
Yeah.
And they kind of brought that element back in. That element was actually kind of lost with the building cupboards that they put in that disable your ability to build next to other people's cupboards if you don't have access to it. And so people started abusing the rock base that has become popular. And you have an elevated base. You basically have a floating base where nobody can really get up to as long as you pick a good rock. So you just make a cupboard, you build up to the rock, just start building a base, the very bottom floor, and then throw a cupboard in there, and then nobody can get up to there. Nobody can build up to the base, because you have to build up to your base each time, get up to it. So it just kind of was abusing that fact, and this last patch they just put in, they added ladders, so I'm hoping...
Which totally ruined that.
Yeah,
I watched someone raid a base exactly like you were talking about. It was 3 stories built on a rock, and at the very bottom, in a tiny crevice corner of the rock, somebody had thrown the build permissions, and then the remove permissions were elsewhere in another room, locked away, so that you couldn't just unlock build permissions and then fuck with this base. You had to do everything. You had to destroy it.
Yeah, and that's what people did. You'd have your main cupboard, is basically what it's
called. But I watched
you
someone raid it, and they just...
Yeah,
with ladders you can do it.
Yeah, it was frustrating. The rock bases were like the most frustrating thing ever, because it takes that whole element of being able to raid somebody away. So you just have like these untouchable bases that are either impossible or near impossible to even think about raiding. So you just look at them and you're like, well, they're there. There's nothing you can really do unless you did some shit where you have like a bunch of rocket launchers and you just keep blowing through a bunch of rockets to destroy the foundations of the base so it all topples down. Like that kind of
is
stuff.
Apparently better for that, but yeah.
Yeah, but like bases you can't get to the C4 up to. You could you could build a raid bridge and suicide yourself every time and throw like one C4 at a time, or multiple C4 while you fall, and hopefully you hit your target. But it's...
I mean, yeah, you can just kind of rain them down from a top.
The process to make C4 right now is it takes so much time and
from what
material.
I understand, it takes for fucking ever, like 40 minutes or so on double.
Yeah, it's
like an hour or more.
To make a few C4, just make like 2 or 3 C4, it's about like a 40 to 60 minute process just to get those few C4 with one person. Like if it's just one person making the gunpowder, then turning the gunpowder into the explosives, then making the explosives into the C4. The gunpowder and the explosives are the long part, the gunpowder being the longest part of it, because you have to queue up a shit ton of gunpowder to make one C4. I think it comes down to the raw materials. It's about 2,750 sulfur and 2,750 charcoal to make enough gunpowder for one C4.
That's a lot of time.
Yeah.
The race raid I saw, they got 12 C4 and a shit ton of ammo. So
yeah,
the base they raided was loaded.
If you have a group, you can stockpile the C4. That's for sure. It's way easier in a group, but to like solo, one person making C4.
But I mean, even still, if you're in a group
and
you've got one guy who's got to basically AFK for an hour just to make some stuff so that you can go base raid, is kind of a pain in the dong.
Yeah, you just have to sit in base because you're not going to walk out for the base and do shit while you're making that and lose it all. There's no way. You're not gonna risk it. So you have to sit there and craft. You basically have to craft C4 and do something else, either in the base or just some off screen and do something else. Alt tab. Enjoy yourself in some other manner while your character sits there and makes enough gunpowder for maybe 3 C4 for an hour. The process is definitely, and the process is definitely really long, and I know that they did it on purpose, so you didn't have like these groups just kind of raffle stomping the entire server.
C4, yeah. But at the same time, like there's got to be a better way to implement, I don't know, scaling, right? Like, making enough C4 for one would only take like 30 minutes or something. Or, like
what they used to have in Legacy Rust is a workbench. They'd put in a workbench where if you craft next to the workbench, it will reduce crafting times to half. So if you're able to craft a workbench and you just craft next to the workbench, it reduces to half, but you still are forced to sit in one spot. Like with the workbench thing, you're forced to sit in that one spot for the half crafting. You can't even go
but I'm thinking of a way to like not snowball it, right? So like it makes it more friendly for someone who's trying to get his first 5 C4 versus somebody who's already got 5 or 10 C4 and wants another 10. You know, like a scaling factor that would imply that it takes longer then and not always, because there's like a nice in survival games, right? You need like a nice balance between, oh, I need to go and get resources, and I don't spend all of my goddamn time getting resources. Like, I'm not about to spend 12 hours gathering enough resources to build a monster base so that I can, like I mean, maybe, you will over the course of, like, a week or whatever, and it's all about time frames. Like, if you want the base to be this big, then you want it to take, like, a week or whatever, like, this many hours worth of gathering, but there's a balance that you need to mix, and it seems like Rust needs some changes as far as like crafting goes. Like, gathering of resources seems okay. I noticed a lot of servers had double gather.
Yeah.
But the
that's
crafting
where the modding comes in.
Takes for fucking ever. Yeah, and having nice mods for it would be cool, but like...
There's even some servers that mod the crafting time to make it... They can do instacraft. Some servers just, you make it, it's immediately made.
Yeah, but instacraft is like obviously easily abusable.
Yeah. But that's the thing that Rust, like,
and that's where I want,
developers went to kind of turn away from. Yeah.
Yeah, and I want like a balance between instacraft and scaling. So like I said, like if it takes longer, then that's because you've already gathered a bunch of these resources or something. I don't know. I don't know how you would implement something like that.
Well, I think a good trick that they could do is maybe make something where you can craft something and then like maybe have an object that will craft it for you instead of you personally crafting it. Because the way the system is, you have to personally craft it and sit there. So if you're crafting it and you go out and die, you lose all the crafting material that you had. Even though they said this last update they fixed that, where if you die while you're crafting, the stuff that you queued up and that's still in queue will go back to crafting once you respawn. But there's still kind of a buggy problem with that where it won't work. It only works sometimes. But instead of having that, because if you're crafting and all that good shit, and maybe necessarily you don't have a base you go back to, and you're crafting shit and you die, and you just fresh spawn, and you're in that same situation where it's an unlikely situation, but you're in the same situation where you're out in the open exposed and you have no way to defend yourself while you have all this crafting shit on you. Maybe you can put like a table that you could craft on and leave it at the base, and it will craft while you're at the base, and you can go off and go back to farming and that kind of shit. But I don't know if they want to do that. But
yeah, I mean,
I feel like it might be something that could work.
That's kind of the way it is, right? Like, you just build like some sort of thing, and then you AFK with it sitting in the oven or whatever.
Yeah, and they've talked about it with resources. They're about to put in automatic resource gathering structures that you can build and you can put down, and it will gather like rocks or fuel, that kind of stuff, kind of like an oil drill. Or I don't know how they're gonna necessarily what they're gonna use for the resource gathering for like metal ore or sulfur ore, but they are talking about doing that. But I'm not sure if it's going to be something you'd have to protect, like somebody could just stroll up and destroy it, because the 3D art and the models that they showed examples of, it looks like fairly big structures. Like, it looks like they're like 3-story structures in themselves. So I'm not
like an oil rig or like something like that you would set up and
it's
just
basically
leave.
that. Yeah, and it will gather it for you, but I assume you have to either build something around it or just try to protect it while it's out in the open. Because I can't see players just letting that sit there, and you don't want people just to be able to come up and just take your shit that's being gathered. So it'll definitely
players stop building bases and start building walls.
Yeah, like, it's basically you're gonna have to have your base where you can put all your loot, and then also build a structure around these automatic resource gathering things. And I'm not sure if they're gonna make it you need a blueprint for it, or how it's gonna work. I'm not entirely sure how they're gonna implement it, and they haven't said much other than that they're wanting to implement it and put it in the game.
Is there a crop system of any kind? Is there any way that you can gather food, like necessities, without leaving base?
No, there's none of that. I'm not sure if they're gonna try to implement that too.
So you always have to hunt.
Yeah, you're always having to kill animals for cloth and food, and it's something that you always have to do right now. It's just there's no other choice. You gonna run out of food, especially if you're in a group. So you just it's kind of like a side objective. While you go out to gather other stuff, you have to bring like a bow with you so you can use the bow.
I mean, like, it makes it kind of interesting in that you are constantly forced to leave your base or whatever, but, like, I don't know. There's also...
Yeah.
Like, I know Ark said they're gonna have agriculture in their game. Minecraft has agriculture, as well as you can, like, people have figured out ways to, like, and they've implemented ways for you to grab animals and to basically domesticate them so that you have constant, like, available food. And, like, getting C4 quickly isn't as important to me, and definitely not, like a huge issue in compared to, like, gathering food all the time. Like, you don't want to constantly have to farm.
Yeah, and that's, I think that's the main thing.
Like, get to a certain point. Like, I've spent 40 hours on this server, and now I have, enough food and water that I can do other things, that I can exclusively build C4 and don't have to waste time doing other stuff too. Like, that's a good feeling in other survival games.
And what it's created in Rust, which is I find amusing myself, is that it's created this weird, like, structure system that you have in, like, real life, where a lot of these, like, groups and stuff you have on servers will recruit people in, but they have to do a specific job for the group. Like, they have to go out and
you are our hunter for the next week, and then if you don't fuck up, then we'll let you come raid with us or whatever.
It's basically like, if you want to be part of the group, you have to do this for us, and we'll keep you around and we'll protect you. It's almost like a mob. It's almost like being protected by the mafia. Like, as long as you keep doing your job for them, they'll protect you. You can build around in their area, and they'll, like, overwatch your shit. But as soon as you stop providing for them what they want you to provide, or they just decide they don't like you anymore, they will just kill you, take all your shit, and remove you from their area. It's this weird sort of like mafia-style clans and groups that bring people in, like starters and fresh spawns, to do work for them, so the fresh spawns don't have to waste their time trying to find a safe place to build or do all this other shit. They basically provide for you, and you provide for them. But they generally get the better deal. They just offer protection for you, and you go farm all their materials.
Well, yeah, the better deal, and that, like, I don't know. I mean, if you get to keep some of the materials, then it's basically the same thing that you were going to be doing, except for safer, depending on how, what they want you to do, and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, I mean, it's really awesome to see stuff like that happen, and because it's just like anything that happens in, like, the real world. If you were in that situation in the real world, and you needed to survive, you have these options that you can choose to act with, like go work for somebody. Maybe you found some friends you can survive with, or maybe you're just gonna trust yourself and trust nobody. You're not gonna trust anybody else because you don't think you can trust them. So you have these different play styles that kind of play out like they would in the real world in the same situations, and I think that's what's fun to see from like an outside point of view with Rust, watching these people behave the way they do. Besides, the normal kind of experience you get online where people are usually mad at each other, because that's always there. But the player interaction, I think, is really neat sometimes.
I think
really
that's
depends
part
on
of
the
why
people.
people play MMOs and just online games in general. It's just that
Yeah.
kind of interaction. It's definitely different in a game like that versus an FPS or
But-
MOBA or another game where you're competing
Yeah.
with these people for a certain amount of time and then you're leaving and you're not seeing them again. Whereas with a game like Surviving, you have to stick around for a while. You're spending more than just maybe an hour or two on that server, unless other factors come into it.
Yeah. Which is, I think, why I like games like Rust. Like, I lean towards Rust more than the other survival games because it has that kind of like sandboxy, run by the players
It needs
element.
more sandbox. Like I
Yeah,
want
it could definitely
Minecraft.
use more.
I want Minecraft that looks good and is interesting. I don't know.
I think Ark.
Transitioning
I think
into
Ark
Ark.
might be. Yeah, I think Ark might be more towards that, more kind of
Sort of.
Minecrafty.
They have
survival.
agriculture and they have domesticating of animals that you can ride. And that's kind of interesting in itself.
I'm really excited for it because it to me, what I've seen from it and hearing about it and reading about it so far, it almost feels like what Rust is building up to be, but it's already there. Like
It
they've already
feels
got it all.
like Rust, but with a better studio. Backing it basically with the more sophisticated studio. Nothing against like the developers, right? But like they're gonna have way more extensive content than the game is just coming out. Like
Like they've already beat Rust to the punch, where Rust has been spending over a year, almost 2 years now.
well, and I mean like
building
that's
up what they
it's the
have.
different kinds of devs, It's like they're being open about the game and they're developing it in front of you, whereas this game got cranked out really quickly and they're gonna release something and they're going to develop it in front of us. They've said they're gonna have Twitch streams, things like that, but as far as content goes, they've got a way bigger inventory of content and a more interesting game design in general, I think. I don't know how much you caught of the like storyline background stuff, but that looks really interesting.
I thought that was all really cool. Like it seemed to have like a
optional.
whole bunch of shit.
I like the
there's
idea.
a whole lot of stuff to do.
I like the idea of having that storyline background. Not that I'm opposed to randomly generated maps. I actually really like exploring randomly generated maps because it's different every time. It's gonna at very least you have that. The map is going to be different. But in this, like, the storyline's not going to be forced on you. It's not linear. They're just persistent objects in the environment and things with names, and like the map is the same. But the map is going to be fucking huge. Like, if they're going to have 100 players on it, like, the map is going to be huge.
I'm interested, really, to see how their single player works out.
Their single player to me just looks like basically just a dumbed down version of their multiplayer. Like,
I feel
you
like
can
maybe
do everything that you're gonna like. You could do the same thing that single player is online by hosting a server of your own, and playing on that. But
it feels like single player is almost kind of like almost like a tutorial for yourself to learn the game without any worrying about other people. But
right, but you can, like I said, you can do the same thing by hosting a server of your own and playing on it, and then maybe inviting a couple friends to come enjoy learning with you, something like that. But
is the hosting free on this game?
You can host servers. I do not know if it's free. I mean, if it's not free, then I would hope
assume
some
you
sort
probably have to pay for the server, but sometimes you don't have to.
There's workarounds, right? So, like, With a Minecraft server, right, you're supposed to pay to get a Minecraft server, but and this works with pretty much any other thing that has LAN built into it. There's a program called Hamachi, which fakes LAN. You can add any computer that you can see through the internet into your LAN, and Hamachi gives you a fake IP, like it covers your IP to give to those other people within your LAN, and you can host a LAN server off of Hamachi using that IP. And then other people through the internet can join it. Because LAN is the same thing as the internet, it's just supposedly closed, but like it's able to fake LAN. So you can run free online servers like that, and depending on whether the game supports that kind of thing or not.
So, yeah. Because most of the survival games I see, like DayZ and Rust and that kind of jazz, the player-hosted servers are usually paid for servers, and that's when a lot of them will ask the players that regularly play
most
for donations.
Online servers are like that, but like I said, Hamachi is a workaround.
But I'm actually really like excited for this game because I think it's gonna take what I really like from Rust,
make it a lot better.
I've been enjoying that, and like add way more content and way more to do instead of just survive and kill each other.
Interesting lighting systems.
Like the rideable dinosaurs and like
tameable
dinosaur
dinosaurs seems
combat
legit.
in itself adds a whole another like level of play that will be super fun to have. And like taming dinosaurs and like even like the previews, like the Tyrannosaurus Rex smashing through the doors, and they're all fighting a T-Rex and that kind of shit.
Did you catch the part about the bosses?
Fun. Yeah.
They're summonable.
The summon bosses.
So like maybe the T-Rex isn't something that roams around the map. Like, in that preview, it's hard to tell, right? But, like...
Yeah, in the preview, it's hard to tell if it is or not.
If it's a boss, then technically you would get to some point in the game, and then your group of people, or you yourself, would decide that you're strong enough to solo it, and then you would summon the T-Rex and fight it, and that would be pretty
I'm
legit.
curious about the T-Rex, because I know for a fact the dragon is one of the summon bosses, because they even set it up like a... They even set it up to make it...
It's a storyline. It's the end storyline summon boss. I almost guarantee it, but...
They even set it up like if you were in like a raid party for like playing WoW or something, and you had the 4 players standing in front of the dragon.
It sounds like the whole guild thing in Rust, how it kind of just organically popped up. In this game, it seems like it's going to be a little bit more.
I'm curious.
It's thought about a little bit more in the development stage.
Well, they have the option to have like a co-op server, so you don't have like the PvP and the players just work together.
But that's the same thing as just like uncheckboxing PvP from hosting your server, which is, whatever.
Personally, I'd probably just go into the PvP servers because it's fun to fucking have to worry about players sometimes.
Yeah, why wouldn't you? Like, it makes it more interesting. It adds another element.
It adds an extra element of gameplay that you're forced to deal with. Which is generally the case. It's not like you necessarily want it to happen, but
and you can avoid it.
To force to deal with other people,
it's a situational thing, and it just adds like an extra exciting thing to the game. Like, why wouldn't you want to play that? And I can understand not wanting to play it early on, maybe, or like a low population server, but like PvP is just so much more fun.
To get to know the game, I could see that. But I think once you get a general grasp on the game, just like how to start out, I think that's where once I learn how to start out, I'm generally okay with dealing with other players as long as I am confident in my ability to start out the game.
I hope that like they were saying a lot of things about like the map's going to be big, the 100 players and whatnot, and like they're going to try to add as many optimization options as they can so that you can try to, really crank the graphics down and actually get it above 30 FPS, which is what they said that it was been running at. So that's like kind of meh, but like...
I mean, I'm okay with that.
It's Unreal 4
engine. The 30 FPS.
So like eventually, before they release it on consoles, which it will be released on all consoles and all like Linux, Mac, and PC, so like, and fucking Oculus. So they're gonna release it on a lot of things. And with the Unreal Engine, I'm pretty sure they can get it nice and optimized. But as long as they've got the optimization options in there now, so we can dumb down the graphics while it's unoptimized, and then they optimize it later, that'll be really nice.
I'm interested to know if they're going to try to do cross-platforming, or if they're just gonna they're not even gonna bother with that.
Depends on the player base, obviously. Like,
I've seen very few cross-platform games work out as
yeah, that's what I'm saying.
cross-platforms.
Like, it's more likely that if there's not a whole lot of love from Xbox or something, that it comes out as mostly a single-player game or something with like a DLC for multiplayer. I don't know how they're gonna do that.
Maybe. Well, from what I've read, I've heard that it's not gonna be any. They're not gonna do like any of the DLC shit. They're just gonna. It's gonna be
Well,
one.
they didn't say anything about DLC. They said no microtransactions, which basically means no in-game content that you can buy. But that's that doesn't disclude downloadable things out. Like,
yeah, with the way they're wanting to do this game, I could see the DLC, but I think they're gonna
cost a lot of money when it comes out. So hopefully they add all the content in then, and hopefully there's enough of a player base that they don't want to do, like, because they said the servers are going to be expensive, right? So like hopefully they don't have to do cross-platform because there's a small player base or something. Hopefully they can have enough people that they can actually have individual servers.
I think the PC that gives them a little bit more wiggle room because you can just have player-run servers.
Right,
I'm not sure about consoles.
I don't know how the consoles are going to deal with mods, and if they're even going to deal with mods in any way. Like
that's the one thing I'm curious about.
That doesn't sound like a good idea to me. Like, if the to me, if you're going to have servers for console, they're going to be non-modded. Probably
with these new consoles,
servers,
actually,
vanilla either that are hosted by the company, vanilla servers, or vanilla servers hosted by players, because they're not going to have modded ones. The consoles are going to already have problems running the game at any reasonable FPS
I think
without
the
a bunch
consoles
of
are
random mods.
I think the consoles are going to get those mods that they kind of decide.
Oh,
like
yeah, no, the ones that
decides.
make it from... The ones that they've said, like they said that they were going to adopt mods that they enjoy, right? Or that they get a lot of player love. So if we see really interesting Dota-style mods, or we see some sort of, like, you know, more deathmatchy, firefighty kind of thing, then yeah, I think those mods will get support in console version, but I don't think, you know, the open modding Steam Workshop idea is going to, like, those servers that have Steam Workshop mods on them will not be console accessible.
Well, the way it could. The way the new consoles are set up,
like a Steam computer, maybe a Steam OS computer, but like not a legit Xbox. I don't see that happening.
I think it's
mods tax your
system
system way too much. I like like having a mod, right? Is like it's not gonna be optimized. It's not by the game devs. It's by a person. So there's no way a console's gonna be able to deal with it unless it's a really small mod.
I think what's gonna happen is they're just gonna get whatever mods that the company decides that players made or they make themselves, and like you said, they're just going to hand them down to the consoles through either updates or... I hope that
they hire people that make really good mods. Like, the mods that do show up, the mods that do get really noticed in this early access phase, I hope they hire those people and that they use those people to make it work on consoles so that, you know... That would be
really awesome.
It's worth $60. Because, like, they're doing everything else right so far. If they've really only been in, you know... development for 7 months, they've done a lot of stuff. A lot of fucking stuff.
They pumped out a whole lot of shit. They seem more... Well, they seem put together really well in comparison to the companies like making DayZ and Rust and all these other survival games. Whatever team they have, or team dynamic they have, whatever it is, it's working for them. Or it seems like it's working for them. What they have so far, they have a whole shit ton of content. More content than most of these survival games have. So, whatever process they're using, it's clearly getting them to where they need to be.
Well, they just basically said that all of them have been in the game industry for, you know, some as long as 10 to 13 years, right? So, like, they've been in it for a while, and they've just focused on the things that they really wanted to get out. Which is the things that are marketable, probably, like the stuff that we all see right here in the checklist, like the stuff they talked about. Everything
Yeah.
else, like optimization, has been completely left out of the picture.
I'm really
At
like
least currently.
to get off track of what we're talking about right now. I'm really interested in the RPG stat building that they're talking about. That they're
There
hinting on. They're
is.
not really explaining much about it
They
from what I
explained
saw.
two different stat systems from what I could gather, but like you said, it's very hinted. It wasn't very specific. There was a skill system that you could stat into that it sounded like had some blueprinty style things to it, right? And then there was what sounded like a randomly, not randomly, but like a task-based generated skill progression where like if you fire a bunch of arrows, you become better at that. Is what it
Yeah.
sounded like. But
Well, the way
I don't know how much of that one exists. I know that they're gonna have stats that you get into and that will help you build basic things.
well, I'm curious what they're going to do with it because the way he talked about it, there's one part of that interview that you linked me with him talking about it, and he said it would be easier to level up with like a group of players than by yourself. And I'm not really sure. Like the way he described it, it sounded like you had like these levels, maybe like a skill tree or something. I don't know.
It was definitely skill
like
tree
throwing like a skill
sounding.
tree.
Yeah, no, it sounded like to me that there was a moderately sized skill tree that like early on would allow you to maybe build a spear or a bow or something similar to that, but more complicated things like a gun you would actually need a blueprint for or a recipe for. And that you could lose that was like an inventory item. So it sounded like the skill tree didn't like the skill tree part of the skill stat system didn't really affect your stats very much, or he didn't really touch on how it affected your stats very much, but it sounded to me like your stats were affected based on what you did. So it potentially in a group, if everyone was doing very specific things, then yeah, you could all potentially level up or gather a lot of resources very quickly because you would become very skilled at your individual thing.
That's what I'm thinking. And I'm thinking maybe if you're in a group, what would it happen if they do have a skill tree? I'm wondering if the skills trees branches off into like specific on like classes, like you have like in an MMO, but survival skills, I guess, like combat or gathering or crafting, that kind of thing. I wonder.
Maybe it's not a passive building thing where like if I'm gathering all the time I do it, but maybe there is a skill thing in the skill tree that's not a recipe, that is just like I gather 3% faster and then I gather 10% faster as you get higher or something. I don't know.
Yeah, that's what I'm curious about. I'm curious if there's going to be like group classes where the game itself will kind of force you into classes.
That kind of content is something that you did not see in Rust, and that I'm really excited for. And then, like the other part of the content that they added that I'm really excited for, like I said, is the farming, like the lights, the turrets, the automated stuff. Like,
yeah, what they've seemed to done is take everything that people were saying they wanted in survival games that other survival games weren't necessarily doing, but they were like enjoying stuff like Rust and DayZ, but they were always talking about, oh, well, it would be cool to have this, and like it kind of seems like they took all that stuff, gathered it up, and threw it in their game, and they're gonna be like, hey, we got all this shit that you wanted.
And
in
added dinosaurs instead of zombies,
and threw fucking dinosaurs in there.
Just cause we like dinosaurs.
There was one game that came out that was another dinosaur survival-based game, but I never really heard it picking up any steam.
It was not good, and it wasn't really survival-based. It was like wave-based, killing floor style dinosaur shenanigans. Yeah. Maybe there was a survival one, but I didn't see it.
I heard it pop up every now and then, and I can't remember what it's called off the top of my head, but I heard people mention it to me before, and I was like, I'm just not interested. Because I went and looked it up at one point, and I was like, doesn't seem fun. It seems like a cool idea. And then Art comes along, and it's basically like, and this is dinosaur survival. This is the actual dinosaur survival game that they probably wanted to make but couldn't.
Yeah, I know. It's definitely a dev team that's been watching other games similar to it, and they've got their own idea for how it should be made, and it looks very well polished for how early it is. Obviously, like for the price point, 25 bucks, I'd rather pay 25 bucks for this game than get Rust at this point. If it's coming out on June 2nd,
Oh yeah,
for money,
definitely.
like I'm just gonna save my money. Like why would I buy Rust? I like Rust. Rust looks good, and maybe if they made it better, then I would definitely feel more inclined to buy it. But this game has everything that has, and more for me at least.
Yep. I like I've spent a godless number of hours in Rust, and I know there's people that spend way more hours in Rust
Dude,
than I have.
weather,
But
like freaking weather,
yeah,
something that should already be in that game.
yeah, it should be there, like stuff like that. Like, but like the reason like people like Rust and like DayZ, their teams have a whole lot of problems with optimization. So they like all this stuff they really want to do, they struggle with because they have problems optimizing it. They optimizing keeping their game optimized when they add this
Well, and
new
they probably
content.
don't
They
have a
shut.
shit ton of backing or a large enough dev team to really crank out that kind of stuff. And
Yeah.
maybe
Yeah,
that's not
Rust
true,
dev
but
team seems fairly small. Like when
yeah.
it seems fairly small. I mean, they do good work, but it's not quick.
I
It's
mean, if it's the
very,
same
very
people that
slow.
make Gary's mod, right? It's like they cranked out a game that people want to play for a reasonable amount of time invested and money from the people's end. Like, it's not a very expensive game. Like, they just kind of cranked out a game that's good enough to play for people. It doesn't look like, oh, this is the best game ever. We're super proud of this game. Like, I mean, maybe they are proud of the game, but like, it doesn't look
Well,
like.
they've recently with this new version they picked up a lot of steam. I think it's because people started getting more interested, and they started getting more money, and they started putting more steam. But they still don't have the amount of content that like Arc is putting on the table, and it's not even out yet. It's
Right.
not like out for the
And it
public
doesn't
really
have the
yet.
amount of content that certain other games in that kind of similar genre that have. Like it just doesn't seem like they're taking enough from elsewhere and putting it into their game fast enough. And it could be any number of reasons why, but it's not
But
happening
I
that quickly. So
it is if when Arc comes out, I think pretty much I think it's going to be a game changer for survival style games that are coming out. It's going to
there's
hit the market
definitely a
really
lot of
hard.
hype for it right now.
It's going to hit the market really hard, and hopefully it hits the market and it stays at the top because it looks like it's a really good game already, and it seems
Yeah,
like
and
if
they've
they're
been
talking about
pretty
doing a bunch
forward
of stuff
about
with it,
it, about how everything that you've seen and everything they're talking about is in the game already.
yeah, and they seem like they have a lot of plans for it on top of what they already have that they're going to hit you with on release, which seems like a lot of content to play on release and to play through and do all this cool shit. And it's not just a survival game. They have all this extra content that you can in your face that you can deal with, and fucking dinosaurs and stories and backstories, and figure out why you're on this island and you have and there's these floating fucking pillar structures in the air, and you get to do all this side shit besides just surviving. And
Yeah,
they have all
no,
this cool
it
shit
seems
that you
like
have
they've
to
added a
survive.
lot of stuff. Like, for a good game, right, you need content. You need stuff that people want to continuously do. Like, I mean, obviously, replay value of the core game mechanics is important, and if that's good, then that's one thing, but you still need enough content to occupy people's time to make it worth them continuing to play the game or to continue to spend money on the game or whatever it is.
Yeah,
I
and I think they've hit all the key points that you see in like mainly like console games or like polished PC games that you see pumped out by like EA, Ubisoft, that kind of stuff. Like actual games, they seem like they're hitting all those points that you need to hit to keep people interested and want to play it, and then adding the survival element so you have this continuous play that you can do with other people. And they've kind of just they seem like they've nailed it. I'm not sure yet.
It seems like
Once I
they've
get to play
taken a
it,
lot of ideas from games like Fallout and Skyrim, where you have storylines and kind of, named things that make people really enjoy, like, the lore to the game, and then they've added this kind of survival sandbox game to it that makes it replayable, that makes it, fun for a longer
yeah,
period of time.
I think what they're gonna do, what's gonna end up happening is they're gonna hit a new target audience for survival games instead of this what people think are what survival games are now, like DayZ and Rust, where a lot of people
Purely
don't want to.
PvP. Yeah,
They don't
I
really
think
want to
this
put their
is the
time into
new
it.
style of MMO. Like the whole Defiance, Firefall, like Divinity. What was it? God damn it! All those games that are FPS MMOs. Like
I know
they never really got that much ground.
Well, a lot of them are just kind of like grindy, do the same quest over and over again.
They didn't do enough in it. Like they made a new style of MMO or whatever, but they didn't do enough innovative stuff to really make it interesting. I think this incorporates a lot of that idea of the kind of FPS MMO, and then makes it more survival-y. Like, yeah, it definitely seems like it's going for a pretty wide target audience.
They seem like they pocketed the different styles of games and kind of blended it all together to make this really pretty looking survival game. Is what it's going to be called. It's going to be called a survival game, but it seems like it has a lot more going for it than a lot of these survival games, or even like a lot of games that are out right now.
Like survival open world RPG or something like that, you know.
I think this game will get big really quick, and I don't think money's going to be a real issue for them.
I hope not, because considering what they've already done, they either have a really, really solid dev team, or B, a fucking backing from some company already that's given them a fair amount of money so that they can actually put this solid dev team together.
I mean, probably a mixture, probably a combination of both.
Probably a combination of both. But yeah, hopefully they continue, like, hopefully it doesn't get dropped. Like, to me, this seems kind of like the Motiga story, right? Like, they probably, I haven't looked it up, right, but they probably have a solid investment from somebody. I don't know who, but, you know, probably.
Well, hopefully whoever is investing them when it releases, I think they'll make plenty of money on release, and then it might be a slow start because generally survival games are kind of in the gaming community. It's not a huge backing, a huge like player base that's really gung ho about all survival games. But if they present their game well, like they have been, and they market it well once they full release it, I think they'll make plenty of money, and I think they'll make plenty of money just on the early access through the PC. And by the time they hit consoles, I think they'll have enough money to do what they want with the game, and they'll probably continually be invested by whoever is investing, if they are being invested by a big company. Like this is a game that can make them a whole bunch of money, and then give the gaming community just a really awesome game to play. Some that a lot of people have been waiting for other companies to do and other survival games to do. They seem like they've kind of figured it out, and they have the ability to put it out in a game and give everybody what they want who's interested in survival-based games, and more so with the stories and the bosses and the way the game is set up. It seems like there's pretty much a little bit for every kind of style of game you could play, even down to a little bit of MMO into the RPG and possibly skill tree that they have in there.
Yeah. I didn't find anything with a quick Google search on like investors or any sort of money backing from somebody. I know Motiga got like 20 million from a Chinese company that like backed League of Legends or something like that. So I'm sure Ark has a similar story behind it, because they've got a lot of good content for what seems like a relatively new studio. I don't know what else they've put out.
Yeah, but from what they said, they've just recently became a studio. They just a bunch of experienced people that have been working on games for a long time now came together and just sort of like, let's make a badass game. And that's what they seem to have done.
Yeah, it definitely looks good.
Yeah, and hopefully it's as fun as it looks.
Yeah, like I said, they stressed that, you know, everything that you saw in those videos is supposed to be in the game. So, like, cloth armor, bows, all that stuff should be in the game. And then you saw buildings and even turret stuff. So,
Yeah,
as
like
long as it's got
that
enough
content.
content on early release and it really isn't as graphics hoggy as they're kind of making it sound. Like they said that you could lower settings and get it to work on older cards, but they weren't specific. So we'll see how it goes. Like, I mean, it's
I
being
mean,
released soon.
the amount of content that it seems like they have just from the videos and stuff they showed seem like they have a lot more content than a lot of the games that they would be quote unquote competing with. Even though I'm not sure where to throw this game in competing terms, since it seems like they do have so many elements of different styles of games.
Yeah, I don't know what they're competing against really.
I think I can't really say they are competing with anything. The only thing I
I
can
mean,
say they're
obviously
competing with
they're
is
competing
survival-based
with
games.
yeah, with most of the survival-based games because that's definitely what it is at its most core.
But they've
But it
kind of
has a
just
lot of other
they've taken it
elements.
to they've just kind of taken it to a next level of survival games is what it appears to be like. So it's hard to really say they're even competing with those style of survival games where it's kind of where you have Rust Daisy. It's just kind of straightforward, kind of survive PvP. And I know I'm not really sure what direction Rust is trying to take their game, but it's going to be a little too late by the time Ark picks up steam and gets its footing.
Yeah, and they're not being very clear, so it doesn't make it very
Yeah, the way the
possible.
developers go about Rust is they just kind of throw things in your face. We're like, hey, we're making this, and then we're thinking about this stuff. But I think like I think what it comes down to is they're not having maybe an as experienced group of people, which is probably not true. I'm pretty they're probably all really experienced and good at what they
It's
do,
just
but their
different
team
goals.
seems a lot
Different
smaller.
goals, I think,
Yeah.
in the dev team. Like they're making a game, like I said, that's kind of similar to Gary's mod, something that can kind of do whatever, I guess. But
And I mean, you could say they've been an alpha. They've been basically an alpha for almost 2 years now.
yeah, and I
Slowly
mean
adding up
that
to the
happens
game.
to a lot of games. Like I wouldn't be surprised if Ark stays in this early access phase for like a year at least before it. I mean, who knows when the PC
But
is going to get
even
released?
if they
Like
did, they
even if they
already
did, they've got
have.
more content. I agree. No,
Yeah,
but like
they already have more
they're
content than
probably
other
going to
survival games.
stay in this early access phase for a while, simply because they're going to release on PS4 and Xbox. So like they're not going to just
Yeah,
drop the
I
game.
think their early access is not necessarily like building onto the game content-wise, but more so
Well, it should be with the mod
trying to.
idea,
Yeah,
with the mod
yeah. I mean,
incorporation. And they're
besides
looking
like the
for feedback. They're not looking to
yeah.
add on, like, I feel like Rust is looking to add stuff in, right? Whereas this is looking to just fix the
Yeah,
game at its core, and they already have an idea for what they want in the game.
Yeah, like Rust is looking for a direction, basically. They have sort of a direction, but like Ark already has their direction and they know what they want to do with their game. And their early release isn't going to be like a lot of these other survivals where it's kind of like, oh, you can kind of help us, lead us where we want to go, help us see what we need to do. Ark's just kind of like, we already know what we want to do. We're going to let you guys play it, test everything out, tell us what's
But if
broken,
you come up with good
help us fix
ideas,
it.
then
Yeah,
we'll
and if you
totally
come up with good
incorporate them,
ideas,
you know?
yeah, like you have a chance to be
Which
a
is
part
good.
of their game
That's
as
good.
a player.
Like you don't, I don't know. I mean, and there's a nice aspect to building a game up, right? Like helping a developer figure out really where they want to take that exact direction. There's some nice aspect to that, but like at the same
It's
time,
not
you
as
want a
awesome
developer
as
that knows
being.
what they're doing, so that they really are cranking stuff out. You know, that they're making stuff. They have a
But
direction, and they want it, and they just need your input to help make it the best game it can possibly be. That's more satisfying to me.
helping someone, like you said, helping a developer like give a direction is cool and all, but it's not as cool as being able to make a mod for the game and then possibly taking your mod and making it part of their game in an official manner.
Right. And like I said, they're not going to create as much content in a studio that doesn't have a hard direction, whereas a studio with a more clear idea of where they're going is going to be pumping out content regardless of your input, regardless of there's like no feedback from players, you know.
Another thing I'm interested in is how the gunplay is gonna be.
Well, they said it's going to
They
be
didn't.
hit scan for guns and
Yeah,
projectile for bows. Um, and then there's
but I'm
attachments for
curious
it.
to
There's
see,
scopes,
just to see
lights,
how it plays
things
out,
like
like
that.
kickback, like the kickback, that kind of this thing. If it
Recoil,
has natural
spread, that kind
sway,
of stuff. He said it's like Far Cry, so or
so they
Fallout. Far
probably
Cry or
not a whole
Fallout.
lot of natural sway. But
Yeah, I think
there's something that I
those games
see
have a fair
in,
amount of realism in them,
yeah,
so there probably will be some. And I don't know about
yeah, some.
crosshairs. Like they're going with a pretty minimalistic UI.
I don't think they'll put in crosshairs. I think it'll be like aim, like you get to aim down the sights where you can hip fire, that sort of thing. But I don't think they're
Yeah,
gonna
and
throw
with a bow, you're just
crosshairs in
gonna
there.
kind of have to wing it.
Yeah, you just kind of get used to it, which is sort of how Rust does sort of their bows and stuff. They do projectile bows, but their guns are also projectiles. Like it has bullet drop, that kind of stuff. And like the gunplay in Rust is very difficult to use, and
Well, you're
like
supposed
it's
to be
not
able
something
to
you
see
can.
tracers that help you follow the
Yeah,
bullet
yeah,
drop,
you can
but
see tracers, but the gunplay, it's very difficult. It's not something you can go into like if you're playing like Call of Duty or something. You're like, I play FPSs, I can use the guns on Call of Duty. Like Rust, you could be really good at FPS games, but you go play Rust and try to use their guns in the system that is used for their gunplay. It's still very difficult to be good with their guns. Like it's not like something you can like turn around and then just light people out, like to get two headshots in a row. It's just kind of half luck, half skills when it comes to using the weapons and Rust. And I mean, it's not a bad thing. But it's kind of sometimes it's frustrating because there's no real guaranteed way to know if you hit somebody, which you wouldn't know in real life. So they're kind of sticking to that whole kind of realistic
realism.
point there. But it's still, it'd be nice to know that when you're using a gun, to know if you're aiming well or you're not aiming well,
I mean, like,
other than the fact of
obviously the
hitting your
person
target.
dies, right? But, like,
Yeah.
maybe, like, a tiny sound if you get a headshot or something.
Well,
Like,
they did just recently re-add that, which is nice. They added the headshot noise
nice.
just recently. It was like the last patch they had. They just added it in. And it's really awesome to know that, like, if you're shooting a bolt, like the other day I shot somebody from across the map and hit him in the head, and I only knew I hit him in the head because I heard the crunch noise from where I was, because it plays all the way back to your player and it gives you that crunch, like a skull crunch basically. But I'm curious to see if they're gonna do with that kind of stuff on Arc. It seems like it's gonna be a lot easier to pick up. The gunplay seems like it'll be a lot easier to pick up
Yeah, well, there
than
won't be
like
bullet drop on
Rust.
it, so there's that.
Yeah.
But if they don't have crosshair, then hip firing's still going to be relatively difficult, and shooting with an iron sight, depending on spread, could still be difficult.
Yeah, which I'm totally okay with. I enjoy that. Like, I enjoy the aspect of
Yeah, no, I like
gunplay not being super, super
the
easy.
realism a little bit. It's nice. We just clocked past an hour on those two games alone, and I have to
Yeah.
pee mad bad, so I'm gonna go do that. And then, if you want, we can talk about them some more, or Subnautica, or some other game. It's really up to you.
I'm up for whatever. Doesn't really matter to me.
Okay, I'm a pee.
I knew we could make time easy.
You talk a lot, John. I blame you.
I know. That's what you need, though. Talkative motherfuckers.
Ugh, I drank like a fucking quart of water just sitting here. I was feeling a little shitty yesterday and dehydrated, so like today I was just like drinking water and drinking water and drinking water. And like halfway through the first hour I was like, okay, I gotta pee, but we've got a few people watching and we're doing alright on topics. I don't know, I guess you're not in chat, John, but like we had Karma who's been sitting in here for like at least 30-40 minutes, so that's cool. Thank you, Karma. And then like we had 3 other people stop by. One of them was a troll. He was like, can I post a link? And I was sure, whatever. And he posted Pornhub, so I was like, alright, thanks, Kappa. And then fucking he spammed emotes, so I banned him, but whatever, you know.
What is the Twitch under?
It's Vitality Esports. We're just streaming under the Vitality one currently. We got your pretty face up on screen.
Yeah, man. That's because people just stick around because my big ass mouth just keeps going.
Yeah, you just talk a lot. I don't know. Do we want to burn through a couple other games, or I mean, yeah, why not?
I could talk a good bit about just the 2 games we were talking about. There's so much to talk about with just those 2 alone. But, yeah,
I mean, sort of, but I don't think it's things that other people haven't been able to pick up elsewhere.
It's not anything super relevant that we haven't already talked about.
I think that Subnautica is something within the same genre. I don't think you've seen much of it, but
yeah, me personally, I don't know a whole lot about it. I've seen pictures of it, and I kind of picked up on what it was, and then I was like, oh, cool, an underwater survival game. But it's never something that kind of piqued my interest personally, so I never dived further into that game.
Dived. Wow.
Yeah, get it?
I mean, yeah, I don't know. Like I said, it's you crash. You're a space crew member on a ship, and you crash on an alien planet, and you're stranded in your life pod basically at first. So it sits on the top of the water. You have to go down, gather things, kill fish, that kind of shit. Just build up resources, and then you can build an underwater base. But for $20, it doesn't have nearly enough content. I feel like there's less content than Rust because there's no online play. So if you're into really pretty environments and like an attractive, different style of survival game, then yeah, maybe $20 is worth it for you, and they're gonna add more stuff. But until they add more stuff,
personally,
I'm gonna wait until it goes on sale or something.
Me personally,
I mean, it's got a couple hours worth of gameplay. It's got like 3-4 hours worth of gameplay, depending on if you die or not, basically. And I mean, maybe more than that if you really, really wanted to start, like, I don't know, gathering mad resources. But there wasn't a save a couple months back, so that it just wasn't worth playing more than like 2 hours, because then you'd lose everything when you logged off. So like, And there's just not that much content yet. But it definitely looks like a game that, if the dev studio continues to produce it, it could come out as a really good game and totally be worth the $20 that it costs.
Yeah. I mean, me personally, I just enjoy the player interaction on games now.
Right, like, having an online aspect adds so much to a game. Like, so much to a game. Even if the game, like Rest, doesn't have a shit ton of content, like, having an online player base allows you to interact with people, and that makes it just so much more interesting.
That's literally the only thing that kept Rust afloat, was the player interaction. The player multiplayer aspect of it is the only thing that made Rust a game, in my personal opinion. The only thing that made Rust even stick around was the fact that it had that is so player based, where all of your experiences are based on player interactions. But yeah, I mean, I've seen, like, I just kind of barely looked into Subnautica, and it was just something that I don't think really I had a whole lot of interest in, and The fact that it doesn't have multiplayer kind of hurts it a lot. It could benefit from being able to have a multiplayer aspect. I think.
Yeah, but the
maybe it
concept
would
of
get
the game
seen
itself
for
would completely disintegrate if you had a multiplayer thing, because there would either be multiple crash sites or like you'd have to have multiple floaties kind of spread out in some fashion. Like it just doesn't work as a multiplayer game in its current state right now. If it could be at some point, that would be super cool, or maybe even just like a co-op. Like, if they make it co-op, then yes, $20 would become worth it all of a sudden, because you and some friends could spend several hours building an underwater base, and that could be interesting.
I'd be totally up there killing sharks and that kind of stuff with some
Oh,
buddies.
there aren't sharks. They are weird, like, tentacle fucking fish monsters. Dude, they're so weird. They're alien creatures.
Oh. Oh, what else do you want to talk about? What kind of games do you want to talk about?
I mean, you haven't looked into Brawlhalla or Windward very much.
I have not. I've heard of Windward. I've never heard of Brawlhalla until
Windward is
I
the
saw your
equivalent
library.
of Windward is the equivalent of like PoE or Diablo, but with ships. So you kind
Okay.
of sail around and you get stuff over time, RPG style, and you can pick different ships and blah 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 blah. It looks cool. It looks really cool.
Yeah, it's probably why I haven't heard more about it, because
it has an
I personally-
interesting combat system, right? So like it's not
Yeah.
just like, oh, I'm a ship and I can just shoot cannons at you or something and I sit still, right? You're all kind of using the wind in order to move, so you really have limited movement depending on what you've spec'd into. Certain ships are a lot better at sailing into the wind, but you can only fire from either your left or your right side, so you have to constantly swing left and right to catch these cannon shots on these players. So you can't just like travel in a straight line and be like pew 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 and shoot somebody and they die. So there's a more interesting mechanical skill to it than just I shoot things and they die. But it looks like it could be interesting. It was on sale for like $7 instead of $15, and I thought about buying it because $7 really isn't that bad for a game that could potentially burn 5 or 6 hours.
That's very true.
At least, depending on how much you really like it.
I mean, I bought Super Hexagon and I had 5 hours in that game, and that was like $1.
Yeah, that was like 50 cents. But those kind of games, those have high replay value. Those are the kind of games you can kind of just produce and throw out and then, have somebody pay a small amount of money for in replay for a long time, and that's the only reason they're going to pay money for it. So that they can just play it whenever.
Coming back to our Twitch channel, I get a Heroes of the Storm advertisement.
Correct, yo. They're on TV too. They're everywhere.
Yeah, they are mass producing their advertisements because Blizzard.
Well,
Blizzard
okay.
has
So
money.
do we wanna just rant on Heroes for a minute or ignore it entirely?
Oh, I mean, we could rant on it.
Well,
but,
the dilemma I'm stuck at right now, right, is like we can talk about these other games like Dirty Bomb and these new games and stuff, and then we'll kind of have to go and find more stuff for next week. But that's, I mean, like, we're probably not going to be running over an hour every week. Like, I think I'm just going to keep running it now, because why not? It's the first time anyways, so, like, practice or something,
I mean, me personally, I could talk about, if I know about the game, I could run the conversation on about one game and talk about different aspects of it for quite some time, because...
Right, but what do we want to burn on? Do we want to talk about Gigantic or Dirty Bomb, or, I mean, we could go off with something like
I don't know, I've kind of heard a little bit about Gigantic. I've looked into it a little bit, and I've heard about other people's experiences.
Well, I mean, have you seen the gameplay? Like, have you at very least watched, like, gameplay videos?
A while ago. before it really came around. It was a while ago before I fucking... When I saw the Gigantic gameplay. It's been some time now, though, since then. I don't know if they've kind of made it better. But I personally don't know a whole lot about it.
I mean, basically, it's like, I don't know, it's some sort of equivalent like to a MOBA FPS thing. Like, there's definitely 3D vertical movement. You can jump on top of stuff. There's grappling hooks, things like that, that you can use to move around in the environment. Everyone has sprint. Like, basically, you have no mana. You have stamina, and that's the equivalent of mana, but it also is what you sprint with. And certain characters have higher move speeds and have more accurate, longer range weapons, whereas others have like flamethrowers and things like that, or like are casters, you know, that have AoEs and their auto attacks mean very little. And the map is weird and dynamic. It's not MOBA lanes, there's no farming, there's just objectives all over the place, and if you take certain objectives or if you're winning, then your Guardian, which is like your Nexus or your base, moves forward on the map.
Yeah, I saw a little bit of that, and then it gets to a point where they kind of fight each other.
Yeah, sort of. There's like vulnerable states for the Guardians that you can attack them in. They will do battle a little bit. It's I don't know. It's got a lot of money backing it. It's got a fair amount of hype behind it. They've been doing a pretty good job about talking to the community. Like, they hired Thor from Dawngate to
Oh, really?
yeah, he's basically their community manager. He's their Pluto. he's their face, you know, for the game. He's been streaming art, dev talk stuff, just giving you inside views of Motiga, so their gameplay process. That's pretty cool. The game itself, from what I've seen and what we're allowed to talk about at like from PAX and stuff, it looks pretty interesting. The only issue that I have with it is that it's gotta feel really intuitive, and there's interviews with fans that have said, "Oh yeah, it was the most intuitive game I've ever played," and like it's very different from other games. So for it to feel intuitive is relatively important. Otherwise, you're going to really struggle to pick up the general mechanics and the meta.
Yeah, I've heard that a few people that I know played MOBAs like Dongate and Heroes and League, and they went over to Gigantic, and there's a bit of a learning curve to try to take your knowledge from
It's definitely not a
MOBAs you
MOBA.
have now.
It's not a MOBA, because the combat environment from all of the videos I've seen is extremely hectic and mobile. Like, the only thing you could compare it to is like a Bloodline Champions or an FPS. Like, shit just moves all over the place, and you've constantly got to be watching and checking your six, or knowing that your friends are behind you. Like, there's a map, and yeah, your friends can be behind you now, but there are also invisible characters and people who run really fucking fast. Like,
So it's almost like playing Team Fortress 2
yes,
for the first time.
It's very much like playing Team Fortress 2 for the first time, but there's a lot more resource required management with your stamina than there is in Team Fortress and your cooldowns.
Okay. Yeah, see, I don't know. I
And
haven't
there are
played it
skill
personally.
trees. Like, they're upgrading skill trees for the spells as you level. And that's the kind of MOBA part.
I think maybe if I have played it personally, or if I had more experience with it, I could say if it's something I would enjoy playing or not. But from what I've seen, I'm just kind of on the fence from what I know.
Yeah, since you're not in early access and you're not even allowed to talk about it if you're in early access, it's hard to really say whether or not you're going to like it unless you're playing it, because all we get to see is limited gameplay. I mean, they had a competition, like they had a tournament, but they weren't able to stream it, so we didn't get to see any of that. So, you know, we have very, very, very little gameplay, actual gameplay of individuals playing. So it's hard to tell what mechanics we would enjoy.
Maybe once they kind of get past that point, and they kind of have stream tournaments or competitions, that kind of thing, and then maybe I could give more of an opinion on it, since I'm not involved with any of the early access community stuff. I mean, from what I've seen and when it first came out, I thought it was interesting. It was an interesting idea when I first saw previews for it, kind of like advertisements. When they were first bringing the game up in general. I saw it a few times, and it seemed like it was interesting, the concept, but I didn't really actually see any actual gameplay. I just kind of saw a little bit of actual gameplay, but not where like a player point of view with like a HUD or any of that kind of stuff. It was just kind of third-person camera.
There is some of it, and but like I said, it's very limited. You can see that there is a health bar on the left side of your crosshair, or maybe right side, and there's a stamina bar on the other side, and then you have like a Q, E, R, F setup or whatever for your spells. But yeah, I mean, it looks interesting. They have a lot of money, and the dev studio has been very transparent, so that at very least it's nice to be a part of something transparent compared to something like a Blizzard game where you don't know what the fuck's going on until it happens. And they do listen to the community, but they don't tell you, they don't let you know that they're listening. They just fucking, oh look, we added this thing that you guys have been asking for, and we didn't tell you it was ever coming, and you don't know that it was going to even be in this patch, but here it is now. It's like, oh yay, thanks Blizz.
Maybe it just gives them a little bit of excitement. Prizes.
I don't know. I mean, they're a big company. They're a AAA studio. They know what they're doing. You know, they take feedback where they need to. Well, they take feedback where they need to. I don't know. Gigantic definitely looks interesting. Whether it's going to fulfill the competitive role or not, it's really up to the dev team and whether or not they're willing to support it, because I feel like after the whole Dawngate experience, like I have a little bit better idea of what people should do with their games to make it competitive.
Yeah.
Like, basically, they should just do what Dawngate did, but not at the end. They should do it right away. Like, as soon as you want a competitive scene, you should make it happen. Because it'll happen organically, but if you make it wait too long, you're going to end up killing your game. So you have to have good amounts of support for the competitive aspect. You have to throw some tournaments, even if they're not money tournaments, just throw some tournaments that are sponsored by the actual goddamn devs, so that people give a fuck. You know? People
just like that. A lot of people when they go into like those tournaments, they're kind of in it for the glory, so to say. They want to be number one. That's just the drive to be the best of the best in whatever they're doing. And any of the actual like serious players that have been around in the competitive scene, they kind of want that prize money, the reward system there. If you're gonna be the better of the team, you kind of want something in return.
Yeah, I'm not saying you don't put a money,
but when it's first time off, I think teams are very happy to just play free tournaments just to get their names, be like, yeah, we're the top right now.
I don't think that you should require the community to make those tournaments. I think that you should reach out to ESL or reach out to, you know, somebody that within the community that's willing to be a tournament organizer, or do it your damn self. Like, I think that having a dev backing, even if it's not a monetary backing, if it's just like, you know, we're paying attention to the community and we want there to be a competitive side, so here's a tournament for no money, you know, go out and show us who's the best. Like,
yeah,
I think that putting that in takes a lot of the stress off of the community to do those kinds of things when they want them, you know, like, and they do, but it's not easy to do them. And, you know, if you don't have the resources within your dev studio, then it's one thing. Like, you just can't dedicate those resources to doing that kind of thing, then maybe. But, like, a fair amount of dev studios have some sort of contact with an ESL admin, you know, somewhere, and they could make something happen. Like, it wouldn't be that difficult. For a lot of dev studios, at least.
Yeah, I feel like there's been a few games where they could have been a little bit better or quicker on the competitive scene, and it's really hard to place blame for that situation.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's obviously a multitude of things that causes stuff like that to happen, but like in general, I don't think that waiting a long time for the competitive scene to grow organically within the community is a great idea. Like,
no, it's really not, because there's a market out there where people come into these games, especially like FPS games or MOBAs, and a lot of people
where they're just looking to invest money into something that's going to get bigger, you know, like
they're looking to be in a competitive scene where they're going to get possibly rewarded for being good at the game. It's especially when it comes to MOBAs and FPS games. There's always this wave of new MOBA players that come to these new MOBAs that are getting released, like Heroes or Dying Gate and all that kind of stuff. They come over a lot of the time, at least the competitive players, in hope that maybe they could be the top team in this game and get rewarded for being a top team in this game.
Yeah, I mean, you have the ability to attract players that are competing at a reasonable level in other games, but not good enough to be making a fair amount of money, and they could make maybe a little bit more money. Or that they see it as a worthwhile investment because they can see that the money's there now and that it'll grow. Like, even if it's not more currently, kind of thing.
It's a lot easier for people to get established in newer games than it is to fight for those top spots in games like you have, like League of Legends and Dota. It's extremely hard to get yourself into that top tier, top teams, like LCS level teams, that kind of scene. It's hard to get into once it's already been established for a few seasons, like it has been. And I think like a lot of the people that are like high caliber players, that it's hard to get attention in a scenario or a scene like that. You can come over to these new MOBAs, and if you enjoy it and you're good at it, you can make it happen a little bit easier for yourself. And then you're just kind of hoping the game gets big once you're good at it. And you have that top spot. You're hoping that it goes somewhere and it doesn't tank.
Yeah. And that's the risk.
Yeah. And it's extremely disappointing. And Downgate is a perfect example for that scenario going down and playing out.
Yep.
Where there's a lot of people
especially
that were super hopeful.
A high caliber, well-made game.
Yeah, it was really,
then there are
really
dev
well
studios
done.
like Blizzard who are just going to put out a game, like, period. They're not going to drop that game. Like, EA will. EA is just that kind of studio.
Well, I think Blizzard did it well with Heroes. I feel like they didn't dive into it too hard, the competitive scene, during their beta. They had
they didn't dive into.
They had that little tournament, and then
they had a fairly large. They invited some people, and they had sponsored names there. And I don't know how the C9 and other teams decided they were going to sponsor HOTS teams. Maybe that was up to C9 and whatnot, but like maybe it was Blizzard's hand. Who knows? But they threw a fairly large-scale tournament early on, and then they kind of let it simmer. They let it sit and kind of sink in, and made everyone hope that next year there would be a bigger one, so that all these grassroots tournaments would continue to push and continue to try to make their game better.
Yeah, and then they did the whole college thing, which I think was
that was a pretty smart move as far as advertising goes.
Yeah, it was kind of like saying, hey, there's gonna be a competitive scene, but also look at our new game.
It was advertising like, hey, we've got this game, you guys might want to check it out, and it was also like, to the competitive players, it's like, there's money in this, there's going to be money in this, and maybe not for you right now, but like, there will be money in this, and then not too long down the line, they dropped the BlizzCon money.
The fact that they were able to push the finals into ESPN, I thought was crazy.
Well, and from ESPN 3 to ESPN 2, so they stepped up in viewership as well. I mean,
like that's pretty insane for North America gaming.
Yeah, definitely. If we're not in
That
Korea and it's on TV, that's pretty big for gaming, for sure.
Yeah, that I'm pretty sure that
Not
was the
even for
first
Heroes.
time, I've ever even heard of any kind of gaming competition being really televised, unless you had like fucking G4 stations, that kind of stuff, where they'll televise MLG tournaments. Like those have been televised, but to be televised on like ESPN from a gaming standpoint, it's I think it's a lot bigger than people realize for what they did to push their college finals for a video game into ESPN.
Coach is talking shit about you. But yeah, it's definitely a pretty big step in for at least for North America, right? Like there's Swedish companies, like Swedish TV companies that own gaming organizers, and then there's South Korea who has a fairly gigantic esports scene. But in North America, that shit doesn't happen. Like this was a pretty big deal for that.
Well, for me, it was just the fact they got it on ESPN. It's
Right, that's a pretty big fucking deal. I mean, Blizzard has the money to do that kind of shit. It wasn't like ESPN was like, "Oh, we really love your game." It's like, "We have money.
I mean,
Will
they
you
threw
take
money
it?" Yeah, I know. Like, Blizzard has the money for that shit. Like, that's the only reason it happened, and that's cool to see it happen. Like, it's cool to see Blizzard throw money at that. But the reason behind it is they want Heroes to be big. Like they're looking to make this game
big publicity. They want to make more millions from the millions they've already
yes,
made.
Yes, please. They have to compete with Gaben, dude, so like they've got a long way to go.
But I mean, I'm curious. I'm curious to know if they are gonna continue to do stuff like that for their competitive scene. To have continuous finals to be televised on channels like ESPN.
I doubt it. I highly doubt they're gonna throw that much more money at it right away. I would reckon it would be a matter of a year
further down
or more.
The line.
Yeah, like at least a year or more before I think we see it on TV again. But I do think it definitely opened the door for other people to consider that an option, and maybe more TV, like smaller TV outlets looking to get viewership, to maybe consider, reaching out to a gaming company that's got a relatively good Twitch viewership. It definitely opens more doors in esports to be on TV, but I don't think Blizzard's going to throw more money at it for a good long while.
I mean, here, I don't think television is necessarily all that big, since a lot of the stuff now is done over the internet, through websites. Now you have like Twitch and different kind of stream websites like that. Like a lot of the stuff now is, especially when it comes to gaming, is just more easily done over the internet, and you're gonna hit your target audience.
There's a real audience out there. There's still a huge audience on TV that's
equivalent. There's a huge audience base,
equivalent to the one that watches Twitch, and some of it is crossover. But getting all those people in one spot is what they really want. And if they could do it with games on TV, then they would probably fucking shit their pants to do that. Like they would. If they could bring back TV in some way, dude, like if they can figure out a way to market TV again in a real fashion, not just cable, like, then yes, they're going to try to do that.
Yeah, it'd be really, it would just be really cool in general to be like, hey, you're gonna watch the game today, and then you're talking about some video game, you go chill with your friends and make a day out of it like you would football. Like Sunday night football, you're gonna go watch a game with your buddies. Watching football, it'd be really fucking cool to go someone's house and just, instead of having to like hook your laptop up to your TV with HDMI cord and play the stream through the TV, it'd be cool to just like turn it to a TV station and be like, boom, fucking the games are on. Like that would just be an awesome experience to have.
Dun dun dun.
Oh man, is that the DACA?
It is the DACA. Well, yeah, there's that audience that uses the TV, but they can already watch
Yeah.
Twitch streams through their, like, and then Netflix. They can use the internet through their Xbox. Like, the target audience that I'm talking about is the audience that watches TV shows via Netflix, but doesn't go to Twitch, and watches TV shows also on TV, as well as maybe sports or things like that. The people who really don't get into gaming more than, like, maybe a tiny casual level with friends or whatever. Not the Twitch viewership, because you're never going to get all of those Twitch people to watch the same thing. And I mean, you're never going to get everyone to watch the same thing, but the goal is obviously a larger audience. And if they could somehow incorporate games in the TV to do that, then they definitely would if they see the opportunity.
And I think as just like our country specifically, it's just not popular culture. At least not popular culture enough.
Yeah.
For it to be like a popular televised.
I think it's going to be hard to reach that audience in general with any sort of game.
I mean, with League of Legends and Dota, like, but mainly like League of Legends has really kind of pushed it a little bit further, and then Blizzard with the whole televised college finals and stuff like that, it's kind of pushed it a little bit further too. But I think League's made a big impression for just the general community, not necessarily really big into games, but they kind of push the audience to a little bit more wider.
Well, yeah, they brought more casuals into watching esports as just a thing.
Yeah.
They made it more of like a sports fanship.
It's kind of like how when MLG got big for a while with like the Halo and Counter-Strike and all the other games they played through. Yeah, it's like when MLG got fairly big and they were being televised on channels like G4 and a couple other channels. I mean, they kind of expanded the market a little bit, but nothing in comparison to how like League of Legends has expanded the viewership for a video game. And like their just numbers are crazy. Their numbers are ridiculous. They're way bigger than anything else has been for a long time. And I think Blizzard might be able to do that with Heroes just because it's Blizzard. Blizzard's just always had a lot of people, a lot of players on their games. So maybe Blizzard could sort of do the same thing for themselves. And maybe with the two of them.
I think that's their goal. That's why they were reaching out to the college students, ESPN audience. I think their goal is to push it in more ways.
I think maybe with Heroes and then League going on and them both pumping out money for these big events and stadium showings for finals and tournaments, I think maybe we'll start seeing a televised like gaming channel, maybe just like just one specific channel for stuff like that. Maybe it'll get big. Who knows? But if any two companies can do it right now, it's definitely Riot and Blizzard.
Riot doesn't seem interested in it.
No, Riot's pretty much, they've gotten to the point where they're happy and they're making a shit ton of money and they're now super rich.
Yeah, but I mean, and Blizzard's not, like, Blizzard's just more ambitious.
Yeah, but Blizzard sees what happened with League and they want to try to take it to the next level. Is what it seems like they really want. And it's Blizzard. They do everything as big as they can.
They want to compete on all levels.
Yeah. Blizzard's always looking for the next thing to make them a bunch of money. And they generally do it.
Yeah, they have a big enough backing with their already well-established titles that they can push out some pretty quality games, even if they start out like shit or whatever. They can usually crank out a few more things and make some more money.
Yeah, and I mean they can easily learn.
They definitely adapt. They're not.
Yeah, they have the money to. They could fuck up and not do so well at the beginning, but they have the money to turn it around and be like, "Hey, fuck."
They have the money and they have the
do."
understanding of how to reach out to the community and pull out what they need to pull out and make their game better where they need to make it better, like really to appease the people. And I mean, if you're gonna try to stream with an Oculus Rift, you're gonna be mad screwed. When they released the basic minimum specs for the Oculus Rift, they said that you're going to need basically a top-of-the-line graphics card. If you're not running like SLI Titans and you don't have 16 gigs of RAM and like the nicest processor you can possibly buy, you're not going to be able to stream the Oculus, period. You just won't. It won't happen. The specs required to run that thing alone are going to fucking destroy computers, at least for a few years. If in another year or two it continues the way it's continuing now and we get nasty graphics cards like a 390X or something from AMD and a different new Titan thing, then maybe we'll have some better cards that can actually deal with that kind of stuff. But
well, the Oculus and all the
advancements.
The Oculus and all the VR technology that's coming out right now, it's it's going to be pretty small group of people that will have access to all that.
Base Beast had one.
But well, I'm talking about have you seen all the VR technology that are coming out where you can run and stand these in-place platforms?
Yeah, I've seen all that, and that's not going to reach out to a large audience at first. At first, it's just
going
to be like...
I want it. I want it, and I want the Oculus, and I want to be able to play games like that. That would be, like, the best thing ever for me. Like, I would just enjoy that, and I've always wanted to have that experience, but... I mean, it's a lot of fucking money.
Yeah, the price point is going to keep most people who want to do that, or would be interested in doing that, from doing it, and like that's the way it is for me. It's like I kind of would be interested, but not at this price point, not for years.
It's about like $700 to $900 for the system, for just like the platform to be able to run and move and have the controllers, like the guns and stuff.
As much money
then you have
as
to pay
it
for
will.
the Oculus,
right?
And then a computer to run it all.
right, and that's going to cost as much as those two things combined to have a computer that can run it all. Like it just won't be feasible.
But it's really fucking cool. Like it's the fact that it's there. It's really fucking awesome, and I really want it, but I'm not going to be able to have it.
Well, and they're adding VR support to a ton of games. Like it's definitely coming. It's just it's not right around the corner. I don't see it happening for a good minute.
I don't see it being to the point where like you can go and like buy an Xbox, like that point. Like you can't. I could just go to the store and buy my VR system and go home and play it.
Your Xbox would be enormous.
like I want it to be like to that point. I want to go to the store and be like, hey, do you see the new virtual reality system they came out with? Yeah. And you go to the store and pick it up from like Best Buy. Like that's what I want. That'd be awesome. Like ever since I was a kid playing video games, I've always wanted to fucking be like in the game. It's everybody's dream. Anybody that enjoys playing video games has always thought it'd be like, oh, I'd really love to be inside the video game instead of just with this controller. Like make that happen and make it happen on like a level where it's like affordable for normal people.
Well, where it's immersive, more immersive than a standard computer setup, but yet affordable enough that the target audience can be wide.
Yeah, instead of like
and that's several years down the line.
Because as it is right now, you have to dump a few grand just to even have like think about having it.
Yeah, more like 3 or 4. But
just generally it's just for a lot of people it's not worth that much money.
No, and it's definitely not. Like, I don't think that it is immersive enough currently to be worth that kind of money. If it was
Yeah.
like 2 grand and a little bit more immersive, then maybe,
If
maybe.
it was something, if it was something that you could keep around for a while and you just use it, like you wouldn't have to buy a new one. That kind of stuff, you wouldn't have to like upgrade to another one and get all this stuff you didn't have. I think it'd be worth the money then, but as it is right now, they're just starting to come out with all this stuff, and it's right now it costs like a few grand, and you know down the line it's gonna get better like really quickly. It's one of those things that's gonna get better sooner rather than later, and you're gonna have to turn around and dump even more money when they make a better version of it, and it would be so expensive to try to keep up with that. I mean, if you have the money and you're able to dump the money into it, then fucking I would do it. If I had just the money to go out and buy everything you need to have the Oculus and the VR system, I would go and do it. I'd dump the money.
I mean, if you had the money, right? But like I said, I don't think it's immersive enough currently to be worth even the amount of money that it's worth. It's only a little bit more interesting to me than an actual video game on a computer with nice big monitors. Like,
Yeah.
and it makes you sick. Like, there are just too many issues with it currently.
Oh yeah, there's plenty of bugs and issues with it right now. That's like clearly evident. But I think it's just
Within a year or two, those bugs will probably be gone, and it might be consumer friendly.
But just like the idea of itself is enough to get a lot of people super interested in it. Because it's the first step to getting that thing that we all really wanted. When you're a kid and you're playing video games and you just want to be part of the video game. Like it's the first step
You mean
that we get to see. Yeah, pretty much. Like that if we have that, like that's the end goal and I'm alive for that, fuck yes. I'll be fucking be doing that all day. That would be great. Like that would be like the best thing ever.
Yeah, no, the
I would love to
Oculus
come out
will
and play
get
video games
firmware
like that.
updates for sure. Like, that's one of the things that's gonna make these make or break the VR stuff. Is if they don't allow for firmware updates and their stuff gets aged out too quickly, then it's most definitely not worth the money. But yeah,
I'm really excited. Just like I'm not gonna go out and try to buy all this VR technology. Like I probably would if I had the extra money to just kind of throw at it, but the idea itself, I like that it's coming out in a strong manner. Like it's been slowly building up over a while now, but they're
yeah,
just
the
recently
Oculus has
starting.
been around for a while, but now Razer's dropping one. Like, isn't Microsoft
Yeah.
working on? Like, there's a few of them going. So technology is going to become a lot cheaper soon once all of these competing companies come out with their own versions.
Yeah, once they all get the hang of it, and they're all pumping it out, and they have all this technology that they're throwing out there, then we'll see it become like a more mainstream, quote unquote, mainstream thing for gamers. I think it's just a really cool idea. Just that, like the VR platforms that they came out with, the two companies that are making them, just the idea of being able to move around and like crouch and run and jump in real life instead of through a button is pretty cool. And I mean, it's really a cool way to just kind of do some cardio exercise by fucking playing an FPS game or walking around on Skyrim. Like that kind of shit. It's a fun, cool way to do cardio workouts, essentially.
Now all they need to do is just like, instead of Sword Art Online, you just need to have like a mechanical bodysuit that you put on that applies pressure based on like whatever you're lifting or like how much weight you're carrying.
Well, they sort of.
So your inventory's all full, and then you're just like, ugh!
Well, they sort of have. There's a torso suit. I'm not sure if they've added to like legs or anything like that, but it just uses electric stimulus. For like if you get shot in a certain area, it'll send like basically like electric shock and tense your muscles. So it'll block the muscles where you get shot somewhere, so you feel it. Like they have that sort of like suit, that sort of stuff is out there too for VR. People that are really into the virtual reality, that's all coming out right now. But I mean, that could easily be improved on. But I mean, they have stuff that's sort of like it's all the different parts are all being made by different companies, and it's all sort of getting out there, the different things that you need for a fully immersive virtual reality experience. But it's once it all comes together, it'll be a whole new wave of gaming, which I think will be really, really cool. And I would personally really, really enjoy it.
Yeah, it should be interesting. Well, we just hit 2 hours,